great pleasure to have you all here. Quite a big panel. We will certainly try to squeeze as much value out of these guys as possible. Sorry, no women here, but you should be suffice, right? Okay, Friederike, you're there, sorry. When I had to look at the program, it was kind of interesting because it was quite obvious, SSP at the same time at a different track. We will come back to that later, I guess. But would you be so kind to introduce yourself? I guess all of you had a quick look at the program and know basically who's at the stage here. But
Tim Finn, I'm the head of EMEA for StrikeAd, which is a mobile advertising DSP.
Yeah, Dino Bongartz, I'm here for ClickDistrict. We are a European network, European DSP.
Pierre, Naggar, I'm the European Managing Director at Turn, a cloud marketing platform with DSP and DMP.
I'm Dominic Trigg from Rocket Fuel, European Managing Director, Service DSP.
And my name is Erich Wasserman. I'm co-founder and GM of Europe for Mediamath.
Sound?
Thanks. My name is Andreas Kötter. I am the head of Germany for Invite Media, a DSP.
Yeah, all right. So actually, if you have a look under the hood, these companies have pretty different features and a distinct position in the marketplace, but still they are all on the demand side. So let me kick it off with, how would you explain what a DSP is, like in 30 seconds to someone who's in the digital advertising industry?
A DSP is basically a solution that allows you to find your audience across of a different set of exchanges and sell-side platforms from which you can buy by combining this with data that you can either have collected yourself as first-party data or available as third-party data and optimize on this your display buy. So DSP basically consists of 3 components. One is the interface that allows you to build your campaigns into it. One is the integration with data and exchanges. And the third part is an optimization algorithm that allows you to get the best of both of that.
Thank you. Not exactly 30 seconds, but pretty exhaustive on the meta level. Would you be so kind and try to do the same exercise, explain in 30 seconds what a DSP is to someone in the traditional advertising media industry?
Sure. The DSP is a technology platform that enables buyers to assemble media assets, data assets, and then apply each of those to unique business problems, whether that be to reach individual audiences about whom you know a great deal, or to optimize to particular goals across a great deal of media scale where users exist about whom you don't have a great deal of intelligence. And the principal means of doing that is algorithmic trading.
Thank you. That's actually, I learned a pretty tough one because I tried several times in my career to explain a DSP to someone who's not a tech guy, online marketing guy at all. Thank you for that. Dominic, and now, how would you explain it to my mother? Sorry, but I really believe we have to set the context.
It's very nice to meet
what
you.
What we're looking at. Lovely.
First of all, obviously to be polite to your mother. A DSP is a buying platform that is evolving. Obviously, based on what we've just said, it's an evolving beast at the moment. To be able to interrogate a lot of data at once and then make a decision about what's relevant and what's there. Now, traditionally it's been spoken about in the display space, but now it's moving into the video space. So right. So it's in
sorry.
all forms of media, Mum. It should be able to be bought through this platform, a simple platform with intelligent decisions.
Yeah, fair enough. Excellent. Thank you. So what do you believe is the most important contribution of DSPs to the online marketing ecosystem right now? Any opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, beside what my colleagues have said so far, I think it's the most important thing is that it's a new way to trade advertising and digital advertising between agencies and advertisers and publishers. I think that's the main revolution that we're seeing. It brings a lot of efficiencies in a market and in a space that has been very inefficient for a long time, particularly if you look at display, the amount of work that goes into actually booking a campaign, the paperwork, between agencies and publishers. So for me, the most important thing is that, all these inefficiencies, go away by using this technology, by connecting, the buy side with the sell side. I think, the reason why it's taking a little bit of time to get there is because it's, we're seeing, there's a need to have tremendous changes within the organizations, both on the, advertising agency side and both on the publisher side. But it will happen.
All right. Talking about the time frame, Dino, would you be happy to predict how important are DSPs in 3 years' time? How will they have evolved?
No, I mean, it differs from country to country. We see that in the US it's very important. UK is similar. In Germany, I think it's the next right now. So right now, I think something like 4 or 5% of all the traffic is won over DSPs in real-time bidding. And it will grow in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think it will be faster than most of the people expect, especially the RTB.
So, numbers.
From percentage-wise?
We're talking data here, man. No, really, yeah, percentage, of course.
Yeah, I think that will up to 20-25% in the next 2 years.
Wow, that's massive. Do you all agree?
No. I think it has the potential to be 50 to 60% within the next 3 years.
But then you're not talking for Germany, huh?
I'm talking Europe.
Yeah, that's a different.
Okay, and you've got obviously an opinion on that as well?
Yeah, no, I think I would say 20 to 25 sounds somewhat conservative, but I think
thank you.
There's been very few movements in the media world that have been hugely disruptive to the ongoing way that media is being bought and sold. I think Google AdWords was one of them, and I think the DSP and the programmatic buying model is another. And it's going to take some time for that to feed through, but we're going to get to a point where the growth becomes somewhat exponential because there's no resistance to it. It becomes self-obvious that this is the right way. It's the most efficient, transparent, and scalable way to buy and sell inventory. But right now, I think as an industry, we're just moving through certain amounts of resistance, both on the publisher and the agency side, to this change in model.
Why is that? Who's happy to take that? Because, yeah, obviously, most of the people, at least I know in the industry, are like, yeah, that's quite obvious. There is a place for the DSPs, for the SSPs, combined with DMPs or as a separate solution. You look at it and it looks kind of inevitable.
But going back to your point about explaining to your mother what is a DSP, I think a DSP, if I was explaining it to my mum, it's a method for replacing people buying media with computers buying media. And there's a self-interest in that replacement. And there's a certain resistance to it. And the agencies have built infrastructures around heavily people-funded businesses. So it's going to take them some time to reconfigure those businesses to be largely driven by sort of computers and technology.
So is it a matter of education?
I think so, and I think it's a matter of innovation as well. I think in the markets that have appreciated the automated media markets to the tune of roughly 10% of overall spend, the education that is needed to take place comes in the form of, one, explaining to publishers that DSPs are not price erosion mechanisms. They are efficient means by which buyers can connect with a great deal of liquidity in the market. Those buyers increasingly represent better and more quality advertisers who demand more quality media through the automated channel. And then reciprocally, so that the publisher opens up inventory at CPMs that respect the value of the underlying inventory and of the audience that they attract, and also meet the demand of advertisers who have a great deal of metrics that they're trying to optimize to, from up-funnel metrics down through to pushing product off shelves.
I think that it fundamentally changes the way people have been working up until now. I mean, I've got publisher experience, and for the last 15 years, I mean, the structures within most publishers have been probably modelled out of the the offline model where people are used to pick up the phone to actually book a campaign, and nice lunches, and so the programmatic buying fundamentally changes the way organization have to be structured internally. Focusing the sales teams more on sponsorship and integrated solutions, and anything that can be actually automated, whether it's kind of banner campaigns, but also within video and mobile, can actually be done through this technology. So that's why it's taking time. There's obviously resistance both on the publisher and the agency side. And yeah, but as I said before, I mean, definitely will happen. It's just how quickly it will happen. Mm-hmm.
I'd argue actually that the idea that it's replacing people is not entirely true at the moment. I think that a good DSP is just an intelligent way of buying a set of inventory that's been there for a long time, and I think that people are going to continue to deal through an IO basis, and they're going to continue to deal with salespeople that deal with those IOs. They'll just be more intelligent about the way in which they structure a deal, and those deals have to become better at delivering results, and a good DSP might be simply at a network or publisher level, or it might be an agnostic trading platform like several people in this group are involved in delivering. So when I argue that I think 50 to 60% of trading will happen within the next 3 years is possible in Europe, I actually say that there's going to be various forms of DSP. And I don't see it being an erosion of people currently selling, certainly.
I think especially the buying part, you said you're replacing people buying media by machines buying media or algorithms buying media. I think this is only true to a certain extent. The role of the media buyer will change significantly in a way where you need more people that can actually make sense out of data and operate on it. And so what we see, and I think this is a theme that runs throughout the industry, is we are seeing display becoming more like search to a certain extent. And we think that helps us a little bit because we understand search a little bit.
Yeah, maybe I should qualify the statement by saying I think it replaces people doing low-level tasks with people doing higher-level tasks.
The Excel logs.
Yeah, and that's what technology is supposed to do. It's supposed to free us up from low-level mundane tasks so we can apply our smartest people on higher-level, more value-inducing tasks.
Yeah. Do you believe something like machine-to-machine advertising can happen, actually, being kind of like the end point of such a development?
I think it's probably a long way, because at the beginning, DSP is a great tool. You can do a lot of things at the same time, but most of the clients and agencies have a certain need. So it takes a while until you can adapt it to your need. And you need another one you're dealing with a SSP or a different kind of model that's adapted to his needs. And if you are at that level, then it's possible, but it takes a while. It takes a lot of logic and a lot of manpower in the beginning.
I think you need a good driver.
Yeah.
You know? It's DSPs can be very powerful and you can do a lot of things, but you also need to know how to operate them.
Yeah, I entirely agree. But I think machines are making more and more of the decisions in terms of that process and the recommendations they spit out. Mm-hmm. And that's what the algorithmic process is. It's an evolving beast, and it's making those decisions quicker. But people need to touch the front end of that.
It's fueling innovation in another respect. The form that expertise is taking is creating new business units, is creating whole new businesses. It's creating everything from service DSPs through to a company that Mediamath and Publi Group formed and announced today called Spree 7. It will be based in Berlin, and it will specialize in operating DSP on behalf of particular advertiser goals. So you have a great deal of innovation going on top of the markets, and the only reason that's happening is because more and more liquidity and more scale is being realized through the automated markets and the efficiencies that those markets are bringing.
Andreas, any additional opinion on that?
I think the important things have all been said.
Brilliant. And by the way, I believe after the introductory round, just if you have questions, I'm kind of focused to these guys, but on these guys, sorry. Hopefully. Anyways, so just kick in and raise your hand and be persistent. I eventually will see you and I'll let you chime in. Something you hear quite a lot from publishers these days is, we're talking about, well, definitely not our premium inventory here, and whatever they want to do, they automate, especially the premium publishers are pretty insistent on, no, we won't let these smart algorithms touch our most important, most valuable, most contextual valuable inventory. So what do you respond to that, and who's profiting most right now? Is it the agencies, or the advertiser himself, because he might even be able to bypass an agency at the end of the day if he has knowledgeable people? Within that sphere, what's happening? Do you feel kind of like the same resentment?
I think this is ultimately price denominated. So when an agency holding group or when a buyer represents a brand that requires particular placements, call them homepage placements, above the fold, et cetera, and that buyer uses a DSP to access their media, the requirement on the publisher is to work with that technology as a function of the buyer using a technology to manage campaigns across the board. But I think importantly, the publisher needs to value that inventory and bring that inventory into the market at a price that is that respects the underlying value, right? So my comment earlier regarding price erosion, the advent of private marketplaces, the advent of transparency, there's reciprocal. So from the publisher through to the buyer means a great deal for the market. It means that new money comes into the system, and it means that publishers realize the value of that inventory commensurately. Buyers realize the value of that inventory in reaching their audiences as well.
About your question, who's going to benefit most? I think all sides will benefit. And the reason is that ads have a chance to become even more relevant to the users, which means that even though over the long run CPMs might increase, it's still more profitable for the advertiser because he has to buy fewer impressions to reach his goals. And in this way, real-time bidding with the chance to combine data and placements really has a chance to lift the tide for everybody. The question is, where do agencies stand on this one? And there I think the agencies now really have a unique chance to redefine their business in a way that they can become the absolute experts for their customers. What works best on which inventory, with what kind of data, combined in which way. It means that they probably have to rethink a little bit what they're doing at the moment. But most agencies we're talking to are really in this process now to see how that affects their business model, and they are changing.
I think there's a danger of perception at the moment at the publisher side that there is this massive gap between premium CPM and placement sales versus what's available in the exchange space. Is it last minute? Is it the minus, the very, very small numbers, which it has been in the past? And it's quite understandable why that perception's there. But the development is now that a good DSP running within a publisher's network can potentially compete with the CPMs that their own sales teams are selling. So who's losing out right now? I think it's the publishers, because lesser sites are getting the sales because their sites aren't available in the exchange. And obviously one of the key movements that has to happen over the next few years is that more of the premium publishers expose their inventory to yield-based DSP purchase.
I think it's a bit of a, and I feel like it's a false problem, and obviously as an industry we're guilty to, particularly when it comes to kind of ad exchanges and RTB, that it's always been sort of an equivalent to remnant inventory. I think it's a trading channel, and if you're a publisher, you want to make premium inventory available. You can, because you've got the control to be able to do that, and obviously there are SSPs that are promoting that very well in the market, and I think ultimately if you can actually control, you've got floor CPMs, there's no reason why you can't sell that premium inventory. I think I hear a lot of publishers who've got that fear of putting that inventory or make that inventory available, but with private exchanges you can actually control who's buying your inventory. So we just the industry needs to move on and do it.
I think it's a bit of a mindset change as well. Sorry, for publishers. No, and I was a publisher before I was involved in the ad network space, where I was for a number of years. And publishers, I think, are beginning to understand that, to an extent, in this new programmatic buying world, they need to detach the value of their impression from their brand. Suddenly their impression has more value because a third party can associate a piece of data with it. And that will be valuable, that'll be hugely valuable to the publishers. So I think it's also the publishers just moving through that mindset change of understanding there's parts of their inventory that have super value because of the brand, and there's another part of their inventory that will have real value because of a data set. But it could be somewhat independent of the brand that it's on. And to the point earlier, you know, the smaller long tail publishers are probably making more value out of the data in the market right now than the large publishers are. And that's something that's probably going to change.
Interesting.
I think that most of the participants in the market are benefiting. Like the clients, it's more transparent what you can buy right now. You can buy certain audiences, certain users directly. I think the only people who will suffer in the market are the people who are selling or buying right now blind without any technology. So it's definitely the market that will drift more to the really technology and transparent part.
All right, understood. Just in addition, mobile. Do you see any difference? Faster adoption, slower adoption, specific challenges in that regard?
All of the above,
publishers, agencies, that relationship, how does that work out right now?
Yeah, I mean, in the same way, I think it's early days for the DSP space generally. We're really at the beginning of the beginning for DSPs in mobile. And the one thing that we miss right now in the mobile space that we're really looking for, and I think if you spoke to any mobile technology player, we're all looking very aggressively at our data strategies. Because you know, we don't have the benefit that the display market has of having this sort of paradigm of a cookie, a universal cookie that we can target against. It's fraught with complexity. So I think right now, in the mobile space, the role that DSPs are playing are very much around sort of the efficiency, transparency, scale of inventory.
All right.
But I think the big driver is the big driver for us is going to be the introduction of data into the ecosystem, and it's not clear how that's going to happen. But it will happen, and our expectation is it'll happen in the next 18 months or so.
Okay. What kind of campaigns are you seeing, and what kind of data do you need to make this higher value promise of DSPs happen? Whoever feels free to pick it up first.
Sure. We see campaigns across a broad spectrum of metrics. So, you know, a good DSP will enable you to buy specific sites and only those sites. A DSP will enable you to apply data to impressions, right, to target your media. In the absence of data, which I think broadly characterizes the European market at the moment from a third-party perspective, we turn to contextual technologies, for example, that provide a unified taxonomy against the wealth of RTB impressions, which gains you a good deal of understanding about the kind of user who is engaged with a particular page, right? So with those characteristics, that means that brands can be assured that their message aligns with underlying content and gets at the audience that they're looking to target. From a measurement perspective, brand studies are old hat in the DSP space by now. And then, you know, further down the funnel with respect to ROI-based targeting and optimized, algorithmically optimized sales targets, certainly see a breadth of those kinds of campaigns as well.
So besides the typical retargeting and shopping campaigns, we get the most demand for demographic. So age and gender is 80% of the demand right now.
How do you solve that right now? Are you happy to share that?
It's difficult in Germany because the data discussion is always going on. It's very difficult to buy data. So we have a lot of partnership with the publishers, with communities, where they give us our data. Because it's not so easy like going to Excelate and buy 2 million users that are female.
I think there's also an opportunity, particularly for advertisers, to leverage our own first-party data. You know, even just beyond retargeting, and it's a wealth of data, both online and offline. And if an advertiser is capable to do that, that's where they're going to be able to start scaling. You know, using system like we have, like lookalike modeling, being able actually to find consumers that look like people are buying currently on their site, and scale beyond retargeting, which everyone is doing. It's how do we go beyond that?
Yeah. Has anyone? Sorry.
That scaling on lookalike targeting is critical in terms of gathering data. We talk about the growth of brand within the DSP space as well. We can now survey users live while we're advertising to them, and then and build lookalikes within the campaign on every 15 minutes. The algorithm's updating itself and buys against lookalike audiences, so it can become a very effective tool. So it's data gathering as it goes along. So there's obviously the data that companies like ourselves gather as we go to make our campaigns more effective, as well as what's out there available to buy at the beginning of a campaign.
And I think sorry, just one thing, as an industry, we obviously need to solve the attribution model problem, which is a big issue when it comes to actually value data, you know, valuing everything on a last click and last impression. It's very difficult, particularly if you do, you know, direct response where you've got very hard metrics to actually value the data and see the contribution of data, you know, throughout the conversion path.
Yeah, but even, just as a remark, even if you have a lot of data on the customer journey, or even if you can attribute some data within that, you still might lack some very specific context. Where was a place and which kind did they react and so on.
You need to do it cross-channel.
Absolutely, yeah. Has anyone of you guys tied into a CRM database or a classic data mining, data warehouse scenario by now with customers, and what was it like?
I think it's important structurally to recognize the role that the DSP plays, right? We're speaking fairly generically about a solution, when in fact it is the case that clients have a great deal of discretion as to how they transact with specific, with perhaps their own data. They transact with third-party data, they transact with publishers. So when a publisher and a buyer choose to engage in a data scheme, for example, it is them and not the broader market that is engaging in that, and the transparency in those transactions are important to both sides. CRM activation is certainly, looking inward, as we sort of say, is exceptionally valuable. Activating segments, understanding what products customers own and therefore are eligible for. These are strategies that are eventually exposing a CRM database, which isn't particularly difficult. You're cookifying a user's CRM, right? And with that information, you can begin to target it at a great degree of scale. So, and I should say benefit for the advertiser.
Yeah, I mean, we've got examples in the US for clients like Experian using our DMP and DSP, who are actually, building segments and after using the DSP as an execution engine. I mean, that's the reason why we build a DMP, because we think that ultimately that's where your USP is, where you can actually, build segments by combining, first-party, third-party data, and then find those users across, obviously, multiple DSPs. And that's what we do. And I think that's where is the value for a lot of advertisers and even agencies are doing that today.
Yeah. Does it, just in addition maybe, does the cost of doing that, is that being calculated into the marketing effort in general? So how big the efficiency at the end of the day? I've seen quite some data over the last couple of years, obviously, but there's always a discussion. How much money do you actually have to invest in these data-driven scenarios to get this data, to get to the valuable data? How much do you have to invest upfront and for the given campaign to make that perform as intended? Does that actually outperform any investments you might have? So any experiences on that? Is there something like a golden formula already?
I don't think there's a golden formula on this one, but you have the golden formula. Okay, I'll transfer to Erich in a second to tell you the golden formula. But I think these two components that you're describing. One is setting up the systems, getting them connected in the first place. I think this is difficult to really attribute to really see, is it worth it or not? It depends on how much you spend afterwards on that. When it comes to pulling in data that is already available in the system, or that you either buy from a third party, or that you have brought up via a remarketing list or something similar into the system, you can very easily see in a campaign if it performs or if it does not, and you simply switch it off if it doesn't bring you the required benefit. So I think in Germany we are so far not yet really set up to really speak about the value of third-party data. At least I'm not. My impression is it is not there yet at the scale that we need. But we see in other geographies, like in the US, we see that this can be of great benefit.
Yeah, in Germany right now we are only working directly with the client and the client data. And that gives you a lift, I would say, about, depend on the campaign, but between 30 and 40% of the campaign results you're looking for when you're really working with the direct client data.
I'd say that once you've interrogated your own data enough and you've started running campaigns in every given vertical, there are some pretty hot starts you can go to without having to. You get to a tipping point where you don't have to interrogate new data every time you take a new campaign on. And I think we're at that tipping point in certain companies, and we're able to plan and plot a campaign without any new given data in any given new area. We all like to think we're individual, but unfortunately that we do all fit into pockets of our buying trends, and there are aspects of our behaviour which are plottable, and intelligent DSPs are now able to track that process without new data given on any given campaign. Now, obviously, having said that, customer data as and when a new campaign starts is always valuable, but you buy a travel client for a specific destination, you buy a new set of serviceable parts for an underground sprinkler system, there are vertical buying patterns that will work with that without any fresh data.
I think it's also, whichever organization is going to start to use data, it's also how they do it. And, everyone should be actually planning. In terms of, you could buy a piece of data, doesn't work for one campaign, it works for another. And as long as you properly test that data across multiple data providers, across multiple campaigns, then, over a period of time, then, you can actually reach a conclusion. I see too often people say, using this data provider, it didn't work for my campaign. Well, that doesn't say really anything. And it's no secret that sub-ad networks have been doing this for years, where they've been using a lot of data, and they're still probably the ones that buy the most data out there. So I think that whoever, particularly on the demand side, they need to have the patience and they need to test the data thoroughly to be able to actually reach a proper conclusion.
How big are actually the customers you have right now, the partners you're working with, the agencies as well as the advertisers? Has it come already down to medium to small size businesses? In Germany for certain not. I know that much. Or have you any insights which contradict that?
We have a few medium clients, but most of them are the big agencies and the big clients like Nokia, Volkswagen.
Tiny. Yeah, sure. All right.
I think it comes to the point I made earlier about the people that you need that can actually analyze campaigns and really drive things. We as a DSP, we are making our solution available as a technology solution that we want to give large agencies to be able well, large, not because we only like to play with large players, but rather because it takes some source of resources that you have to build on your side, able to operate the system. There are other players which are not directly DSPs, but rather DSP operating companies that are more suited than to serve the small and medium-sized business, because they take over this role for you. They operate the DSP for you. Or you can buy from a network like the Google Display Network, for instance. All right.
So we have businesses that have standardized on our platform and derive all of their revenue from the platform. So the DSP's ability to, so in the past 2 years, these are businesses that have cropped up specifically in the European market, addressing specific geographic needs, addressing specific geographic data and publishers, and specifically operating the platform on behalf of agencies or advertisers. It is the goal of our joint venture with Public Group to enable this for the DACH region.
Understood. Anything else to add?
From our perspective, we're almost entirely working through agencies at the moment. We think the tools are being developed to be able to support agencies doing what they've always done, which is providing their clients with greater insight into what works and why it works. And if an external company like ourselves can provide them with that in a very simple way, they don't have to train their own guys up, they don't have to stay ahead of the technology game. They can rely on external companies to do that, and the tools to do that are becoming remarkable.
All right.
I think we're seeing all the big sort of holding agency groups now build their trading desk, and they're ramping up. Some have started earlier than others, and I think in 2012 this is what we're going to see. I mean, and we've already seen, particularly in the UK market since 2011, there's been a kind of a huge growth in terms of coming from the big agency holding groups. But having said that, there are some medium-sized organization, digital specialists who've been the early adopters, and they're doing extremely well. I mean, in terms of how much I actually buy.
All right. Anything else to add?
Some of the early adopters in the agency trading platforms in the US have started failing, unfortunately, and buying again through more specialised DSPs. And that's a trend which is almost reversing where we're seeing in Europe at the moment.
Sure.
Following up on this issue,
Do we have a microphone somewhere here? Sorry? Sorry.
So can just proper DSPs survive? Because from a margin perspective, the trading desk or these digital companies that are providing service on top of DSPs have high margins. But just DSP technology providers are suffering from quite low margins, especially when you go to the big advertisers and agencies which are squeezing you down from the margin perspective. So can you survive just as a proper DSP without partnering to local companies that are generating you like a trading desk offering?
Whoever's happy to take that question.
No one wants to answer it.
So, look,
I will make you.
I think that the volumes that the market is seeing, right? So we're talking about RTB volumes increasing 100% year over year.
Sorry, are there any absolute numbers?
So Forrester did a study with AdMeld that pegged the market
just published, right?
I'm sorry, just published.
Yeah.
That pegged the market at about $1 billion globally, which was roughly 100% growth year on year. So you're talking about a great deal of volume coming through the system, countering what may well be margin pressure on the technology, but with more innovation on top of platforms, giving buyers the ability to participate in more and more products that address marketers' needs. The platforms are incentivized to innovate and to bring in those products and thus make more money to fuel more and more innovation. So those are the patterns that we see in the market.
I think also you can't underestimate the amount of investment and work that actually goes into actually building a DSP and building data centers to actually support RTB. I mean it's huge and it's not something people can replace overnight. So I think that unless you make a conscious decision of actually building your own proprietary technology, which has some challenges, and everyone is starting today is has a big job to do to actually catch up. It kind of makes sense. There's a place in the market for technologies and for people actually using that technology because it brings efficiency.
We haven't seen, no one's opened up their books to show what the DSP gross margins look like, but I'd make an assumption that we're not building our businesses expecting ad network style gross margins of 40 to 50%. Mm-hmm. We're building our businesses around much narrower margins than that, because part of what we're doing is we're bringing an efficiency into the marketplace, and we can't swallow up that efficiency in the expectation of high gross margins. So I'd imagine most DSPs are thinking about 20% being a good gross margin rather than an ad network's 40%.
Mm-hmm. Sufficient answer? Kind of. Good enough then. You did expect much more? No. You didn't? Okay, sorry. I was kind of surprised, I have to confess. Okay, and the sun's coming out, so these guys are put on a hot seat now. Please keep the questions coming. Well, oh, sorry. Andreas, sorry.
I'd like to know what are the main triggers or selling points from the publisher point of view to attract to join an RTB. I mean, then in turn makes it more attractive for the advertisers to use RTB.
I think an increased yield is the key one there. I think Yahoo were one of the first companies to invest in a behavioral targeting technology to support what they were currently doing, and the outlying description of that it wouldn't cannibalize its own business as it grew. And the guys that developed my company built a behavioral targeting business inside that acted like a DSP internally, that added 290 million to the bottom line without cannibalizing any of the brand-led and the CPM-led stuff that was there. So the most important asset is to generate higher yields than are currently available.
Is that okay as a question? As an answer, sorry.
I'm just wondering exactly what you said about the cannibalization topic. That's an issue that I'm not sure where this is going.
Yeah, the cannibalization, possible cannibalization effect was a question in essence.
I would just argue that I think it becomes an additional sell, and it just becomes an additional way of monetizing the business. But the proof is that make sure it doesn't cannibalize what you're selling right now. And so any publisher that is opening its inventory out into the exchange has to test that and see what it adds. Mm-hmm. and set their CPMs, as we've discussed, at a level that they'd expect to be, to be something which really contributes?
I think it really comes down to yield optimization. So Google in the very early days sold their top ad placements on a CPM basis. And only their minor placements they sold on an auction basis. And in one moment in time, they thought, why don't we just try to also sell our top placements on an auction basis? And everybody thought, you're crazy. You're throwing out money, or you're losing the money for the top placements, the guaranteed money for the top placements because you have a certain CPM on them, and give that up for a risky auction model. But I think for Google it worked quite well as an auction model.
Kind of.
I think a market that doubles in size year on year signifies a great deal of profit for publishers and value for advertisers, and that value comes in the form of discrete metrics like eCPM. It also comes in the form of sheer liquidity, right? A publisher can participate in a global market now. We have clients in San Francisco buying inventory in Germany, right? And that is programmatic, right? That just happens within 15 minutes, and those buys are indeed incremental, and the publishers who are participating in those buys would not have gotten those buys had they not been participating in the global markets, right? So there's a great deal of shift going on in the market, and it's recognizing that there's value for all players. The major holding groups are certainly making their big moves, and more agencies and advertisers are recognizing that they need to participate in these markets. So you have a rising tide lifting all boats scenario that certainly, I certainly don't think that's going to abate anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing, across the different, markets, where there is obviously more liquidity, but also where there's more demand. We're seeing obviously higher yields, for publishers. At the end of the day, it's really how you organize your inventory, and if you're organizing in an intelligent way so that you're not cannibalizing your premium placements, it can really work for publishers.
So. If I might summarize that, it sounds like every publisher should have his own SSP, or at least a DMP, to make it easier to handle that kind of data, just to have a better look at the monetization options of his inventory. Is that right?
So we started 6 years ago more like yield optimizer and SSP, and then we moved away more to the DSP side, so we know both sides.
I know why I looked at you.
Yeah. So we always take care still of our publishers, and to be honest, from 9 out of 10 publishers have a lift of the eCPM up to 40%. So I would say yes, you should use an SSP or a DSP or NSP or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Or an exchange.
Or an exchange, of course. Sorry.
Speaking of SSPs, and I announced at the very beginning that I would like to have your view on, is there going to be anything like also necessity in the market for an end-to-end solution, one of these very much discussed terms which are kind of vague, but most people talk about. But I believe in the sense that, is there anybody able to provide a solution from the advertiser directly to the user, coming up with a whole value chain in the digital marketing space? Does it make sense? A. Second, if you object, what do you believe? How will the value chain look like? Right now we have a very highly fragmented landscape, and I'm not going to show this darn slide. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, I guess. What's going to happen there? What's the relationship? I know some people claim, okay, we solved it. We can be an SSP as well as a DSP, just as a starting point, and we can extend that over the whole value chain. So, did I make myself clear enough? Hopefully. Okay. So, Andreas, sorry.
We've solved the issue via partnership, and that stems from a core philosophy that the demand-side platform exists for the demand side. It has a singular purpose in the market, and that directly conflicts with the goals of publishers. And buyer beware. I think these concepts are fairly straightforward, but it just is the case that a conflicting system has to make choices about what it funds, how it develops its product, and its go-to-market strategy. And if that solution makes more money based on rev shares with publishers, then than on the demand side, then you know where the master lies, right? And you know where product development is going to go. You may well lose out on algorithmic development for ROI purposes for the advertiser. So we definitely feel very strongly that the market will remain discreet and should remain discreet, and buyers should really fuel that philosophy in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think alongside, you know, I mean, we don't believe that you can actually serve two masters, and obviously our organisation trying to own the entire stack. We don't believe in that. We're very much, you know, placed on the demand side, you know, working with agencies and advertisers, and I think it's important to be very clearly positioned and not confuse the market.
I think you should never lock in your customers in a certain way that you only provide one path across it. But I think there are benefits from being able to learn from what works well for a publisher and being able to work well from an advertiser and build some common norms around this. So what we are currently at Invite, DoubleClick, Google are trying to build there is a quite integrated ecosystem where you do have individual components that work well with each other, but we're at every stage of the process, we're open to work with other players. We as a DSP connect to all major exchanges. We are free to work with different ad servers and so on. So there is never any lock-in component in this one. And I think that this is a very important part of it, that you're flexible as a customer to choose within every point of the value chain what makes most sense for you. But that you do have systems that operate well with each other.
That slide you discussed, the Luma landscape, the one that shows hundreds of companies involved in the same space. I think I think it's down to us as an industry to simplify that process, and I think we need to combine to show advertisers that it's not a scary place to be, because frankly, what's able to be achieved in that space is almost belied by the fact that it looks to a new advertiser or somebody who's considering coming into the space and really investing because of they're hearing about all the developments in there. It actually frightens people off it and says, I'm not prepared, I don't understand it, I'm not going to buy it.
Right. And it's also hard for us to make the case, what we will talk about, which is efficiency, when you see the Luma slide, because the Luma slide is almost the opposite of what a market with efficiency you would assume would look like. And outside of Google and Facebook, who I think both could realistically, in the short term, have the end-to-end solution that you're talking about. I think Google already does, and Facebook will be there fairly quickly. It's not obvious where the other end-to-end solution's going to come from, whether that comes from big players stepping in and aggregating existing vendors and creating those end-to-end solutions, whether that's Microsoft or IBM or others. But I think right now, the Luma slide, looking at it from the outside, the Luma slide does look very frightening for an industry that's driving towards efficiency. And probably that will change over the course of the next 12 or 18 months.
Yeah, actually, head of a pretty well-known creative agency had to look at this because he said, "Explain to me what you're doing." I showed him that slide, and he said, "And you are the kings of efficiency?" And laughed. That was Holger Jung.
And he hasn't probably asked a question to an advertiser. I mean, I was at a recent conference in London where, attended by most marketeers. And when I asked the question, how many people knew about RTB and programmatic buying, there were probably only 10% who've heard about it. So
already,
yeah,
10%.
Yeah, 10%. But it's a lot of people who don't know what you're talking about.
Any additional question? Talking about this creative side, so what do you believe? Can you make a crap creative work with efficient data?
I think there's always yes, but qualified. There's always an efficient yield curve against any campaign. That yield curve could mean that you can spend very little.
Relative success.
Correct. Yes.
Crap creative will always show itself, and the good thing about the systems that are currently available is that it shows itself very quickly.
But maybe not even with enough data that it's total crap.
I think it depends on how you define total crap. I mean, if it's total crap for 90% of the people, and for 10 people it's really, really great, then it's going to work for those 10% of the people.
Based on the campaign goals, it just doesn't show any performance. That's crap for me.
For no customer segment, then we can't let it fly either. Can't get it flying either.
I mean, you can leverage every creative with the same percentage. So if you have zero conversions and lift it by 30%, it's still zero, so it doesn't make it any better.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, a good DSP should not run a crap creative, as in, it will be optimized so that it won't deliver after very quickly if it's not actually producing the right performance.
Importantly, though, that's, as I say, once you get to a point where a creative is clearly crap, the DSP can communicate that to the agency or the advertiser and say, you know, something needs to change, and we believe it's the creative, and that's happened.
Yeah, sure. I guess so. Okay. Is there anything you can think of that could actually at least limit the success of DSPs in the marketplace? Is that reach, available data, privacy? We haven't discussed that. We won't delve into that in detail, I guess, today.
To be honest, it's the biggest threat right now. It's manpower and knowledge, because when you have a DSP at the beginning, it's a great tool. It gives you a lot of opportunities, but you need really good, educated people who can use it, and that at the moment is the biggest.
I think it's a fear of change.
Interesting. Tim? Sorry.
I feel that there's an inevitability to it. You know, there's certainly going to be hurdles along the path, but to me it just seems obvious and inevitable that this is the right journey, the right direction for the industry. It's probably going to be tougher than we'd like to think, but
I think we as an industry have to try and win the hearts and minds of publishers. I think we need the greater the exposure to inventory, the better for everyone concerned.
So the
and
advertisers
to keep
already
these
get
yields
it.
high.
The advertisers already get it. We have to work on the publishers.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have a question, so you're always looking for questions. We have one.
Oh, the press, the media. Here we go.
You were just talking about the fear of change. I want to get back to the whole publisher topic. Someone said earlier in this panel about detaching the value of the impression from the brand, from the media brand. What do you say to publishers who are afraid of devaluing their media brands they have been establishing for years and years, like in Germany, Spiegel Online or Bild or whatever?
I think I might have said that. I'm to blame. What do you say to them? I think they can still carry on making their revenues from their brands for a percentage of their traffic. But if combining their user, their high-quality user with data generates more yield than combining that high-quality user with the destination site that they're on, that should be a win for publishers. So it's really about them being able to play that equation where they can.
Yeah, I think it's really this intersection of data and brand on this point. So there are some campaigns where you just frankly don't care where you run, as long as you reach the right audience. There are other campaigns for where it's quite important for you to really reach the audience you want to reach on the sites you're interested in. And so for those, it would definitely be also bring an uplift for the publishers, because you could target a campaign only at the male users on your website, one only in the female users, the same on the same ad impression, or only on the car interested in people on your specific ad slot, one at the motorcycle interested advertisers, and so on. So I think this combination of site and data there has a chance to also drive up the yields for the publishers.
Which is where the crucial role that the independent SSP plays in correctly communicating to the publisher what value their inventory actually should be valued at, right? And therefore what the publisher is willing to let that inventory go at. And if the publisher feels that their effective CPMs are too low, that publisher can shut that buy off within a minute, right? So this is a constantly ebbing and flowing market. Tools and innovation are going to are the means by which both parties profit. Publishers should get involved and meet the demand that advertisers are bringing to the market.
All right. Last round of questions, if there are any. Yep, Christina? Hold on.
This isn't really a question focused on anything we talked about, just out of curiosity, because I mean, I've been in the industry, but I don't really remember what came first, the SSP or the DSP? Who made that initial move into automation?
The first, well, it was the exchange. It was Right Media, right, that brought programmatic, the idea of programmatic buying to publishers. Publishers allocated their inventory to the markets, and they were met with buyers. The role of right media was twofold, right? It was to enable publishers access to liquidity and to yield manage, and then commensurately buyers came into the market to meet that. Google then swooped in with DoubleClick and so on and so forth, such that you have the market that you have today. A dirty history, I admit.
Hi, Carsten from Mediamath. If you would have a marginal euro to invest, would you rather invest in additional computing power in order to increase speed, or would you rather invest in additional data in order to have potentially better targeting?
I think we're there with speed. I think data is always helpful.
You can answer as well.
It would have been the same answer. So I think at this moment in time, it's the dollar invested in data is probably the more important one for Germany.
And from a mobile perspective, I think the combination of the mobile audience plus data is going to be so powerful. So we will go with data every time.
Quite easy. Allocate your dollars. Excellent. Good one. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all for being on stage. I believe it was a great panel. Hopefully we touched most of the most important points surrounding DSPs right now. I would have loved to send you all over to the SSP panel now. Not possible at all. Maybe next time. Again, thank you. Feel free to clap your hands for them.